Everybody wanted to be skinny. And all the actors had to be like John Travolta. But look at Travolta now. Yeah. He's a bear.
Yes.
He doesn't give a shit now, and he eats raw meat. And eats the raw butter.
He does?
Yeah.
Wow.
One of his counselors told me 2 weeks ago that he doesn't do the primal diet fully, but he now eats the raw meat and raw butter. So,
is that like a permanent life condition though, to be big like that, or?
No, you can see I'm not big anymore.
No.
I still am a little bit more testy. I'm usually able to handle a confrontation with somebody with a little bit more.
You're calling it that?
With a little bit more grace than I did today. When I have more weight. So I still prefer to be overweight, and I'm on my way. Do you have a question?
Yeah, I wanted to ask about heart arrhythmias.
Just your heart beats to a different drummer. You enjoy the different tune. So funny. My father, he listened to me twice in his life. He got a heart arrhythmia, and I said, it's no big thing. Your heart's just skipping a beat or adding a beat here and beat there. Who cares? How many beats does your heart go through a day? And is that a bad thing for it to miss? Sometimes I miss taking breaths. People go to sleep and all of a sudden they stop breathing and they go, But do they die because of it? No. Just don't worry about it. And thank God his cardiologist told him the same thing. But the only reason he listened to me was because he listened to the cardiologist. The cardiologist said, stop counting. And that was it. My father's lived with this arrhythmia for, he was diagnosed with it in 1961, and he'll be 90 next year, so no problems at all.
And when they talk about valve prolapse, is there any way to rebuild that, or should you worry about it, or?
Well, a prolapse isn't good if it blocks your blood flow, in or out. A prolapse is like your anus turning inside out or your vagina turning inside out. So that can cause blockage and congestion. And that's a severe protein deficiency because of some kind of toxicity in the localized area. So it's a matter of cleaning it and then eating enough protein to rebuild it. And if you want to focus on any area, like I say in the book, in We Want to Live, always put a hot water bottle wherever you want to concentrate the body's focus of cleansing and healing, because it increases circulation to that area. So you just sleep with a couple hot water bottles under your armpits. Or you're sleeping on your sides, you put it here and on the back. 2 pillows in between, keep the heat in. And then it'll focus on repairing there quicker.
And with gout, can you eat unlimited amounts of the raw meat, or?
Gout only comes from high uric acid from cooked meat.
So not at all with raw meat, no problem.
Well, you can cause a detoxification of these stored uric acids by eating too much red meat.
Oh, I see.
So if you have a higher ratio of more alkalinizing minerals like in fish, it can attract some of those acids out of there, so there's less soreness and swelling.
Okay.
Also, eating cheese draws it to the intestine.
Oh, okay.
So those will help reduce the discomfort.
Great, thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. Sir, do you have a question? Lisa, do you have a question? Hold on. Okay. Certainly. Michael, do you have a question?
The salmonella is about as detrimental. Is there a relationship to like
It has nothing to know. Flus are always viral, or bacteria can be involved in some cleansing processes, while a virus is the main activity. But when you talk about flus and viruses, it's virus. Flu is virus. Virus does not involve bacteria. But there are 2,323 forms of salmonella. When you didn't have a bath to get into and soap, salmonella ate all the dead skin on your body. Trillions and trillions of salmonella in your nose, eating boogers, everything, the mucus, Salmonella were your cleansers of the surface. And salmonella doesn't occur. They're aerobic bacteria. And they just eat up all the contamination on the outer side of the body.
So if I eat the chicken with salmonella on it,
no, it's good. You're just going to break them down and digest them, and they're going to be protein in your body. Because salmonella doesn't live internally. It can be in the stomach, but you'll never find it outside of the intestines, the stomach. They're digested. They don't live. They are aerobic bacteria. They require oxygen. Okay. Okay, well, I mentioned, I go over it in the book when I talk about the fats. But the butter is the easiest fat for the liver to digest and to assimilate. However, it lacks it makes like about somewhere around 46 cholesterols from butter. That leaves out almost a third of the cholesterols that help the nervous system. Only cream can the liver make, the ones for the unless you're eating fish, but of the fats, the cream, and the butter, the liver can only make the cholesterols which clean, soothe, and heal the nervous system from the cream. The butter is 2/3 more important than cream because it gets to the outer regions. The skin, the bones, the lymph and connective tissues, and the tendons. Whereas the body, if you feed it only cream, those get very lax and very lazy. If you look at the Fulani tribe, who lives like 90 to 95% on raw milk only and don't make butter, they are a looser tissue, and they have discolorations of the skin. Fulani tribes in Africa. So they show signs that their skin does not get fed as easily. And when I did laboratory tests with animals, feeding them only the raw cream, aside from raw milk and raw butter, the ones with that were eating the cream had a tendency to have more dry skin, and the ones that ate the butter did not have dry skin. When you have the honey and butter together, honey has a lot of, when the bee collects the nectar, it swallows it, and it produces an insulin-like substance that converts 90% of the carbohydrate into enzymes, protein structures which are no longer carbohydrate bound. even though it still looks like a carbohydrate. It acts, behavior is completely different, and it will help break down protein and structures. I've been experimenting with honey in getting rid of wrinkles and lines and thickness of skin because of that reaction for the last year. And I have one fellow who had elephant neck. He's only 60 years old, and he's been on mainly this diet for about since 1979. And he looks good everywhere. His hair's just as black can be. He's an Italian. His hair's just black and not a gray hair on him. But he's got this elephant neck skin. So I told him to start putting saliva with honey on his neck. And in 5 months, it is reduced by 2/3 already. The thickness of my forehead, the wrinkles in my forehead, I don't know if you remember how thick that was. And right here, when I smiled, I had these huge islands that were part of these lines. Almost all the islands are gone. That's putting saliva and honey on there only 2 days a week for a 24-hour period. And it's dissolving. It helps pre-digest things. It helps digest and break down. So that's why I like people using lots of honey, as long as it's unheated. That insulin-like substance is destroyed at it starts being destroyed at 93 degrees, and by the time you hit 100 degrees, it's pretty inactivated. So the honey has to be truly unhoneyed. 100 completely inactivated. So it goes back into high carbohydrate again.
Did that work on cellulite?
Yes, it works on everything. So far, I've used it on warts, on tumors. I had a guy produce a young boy who's, 27 years old is a young boy to me. He's a musician, and a very good musician. And, I get to go to his concerts once in a while when he comes into town. And he's always in this atmosphere smoke. And that atmosphere smoke is an evaporated oil. And I was just waiting for the day that he's going to have a bad reaction from that. And I kept telling him about it. And he broke out with a cancer tumor under the left eye here that was pretty big. And, I've dealt with tumors like that take the nose away and, remove all the area around an eye. So I thought, I'm going to see what I can do. I know that E. coli works, so putting, buffalo shit or, cow shit or some shit on it is going to help keep the tumor down. However, there's no healing property that goes along with that fecal matter. So it can irritate the area even though it keeps the tumor subdued. So I got him to use the saliva and the saliva. I've used water and honey, it doesn't work, but saliva and honey works. So I had him use that on the tumor, and he's kept that tumor at, just a fraction of the size, and I just got an email with the latest pictures because he's documenting it. The latest pictures that the tumor's completely gone. It took a year. It's completely gone. And that's from breathing all that garbage that got clogged in his sinuses and his, around his eye and in here, started producing tumors. That oil that they use for evaporation mist is made of vegetable oils, and vegetable oils in the human body will crystallize. A vegetarian, an herbivore, has a body temperature of 101 to 102 degrees, and it can keep vegetable oils liquid. But in our systems, in 5 to 25, 30 years, it's crystallized. That's what's causing all the hardening of the arteries and the heart and the systems, is your vegetable oils, not animal fats. All the tribes who eat only meat and animal products, even if they're cooked, have no heart disease and no arterial sclerosis. So it's another myth that the USDA, along with the oil industry, has created. I would say it's your lymph system then, because if it were the cream causing, it would be your neurological system. So it's either the bone or your lymph system up in here causing a problem. Starts detoxification. Anytime a mucus flow is, excess mucus is caused by poisons entering the mucous membrane for detoxification. Well, it has that ability depending upon what cholesterols the liver makes. And obviously your body wants to detoxify with the butter and honey mixture. Does it happen with the butter by itself without the honey? And it's got that dissolving property, so it's probably helps form a virus. Yeah. But if it's too uncomfortable, you just minimize it. It would be neurological.
How do you do the application? Like,
you just put the saliva on the area first. Put your finger just to get barely a very small amount of it. Put more saliva on top of that and just rub it in until it's just a very thin layer of honey, and the stickiness should be absorbed and gone within about 5 or 6 hours. Yes, it does. I've been using it on, even cases like your psoriasis. It heals it even quicker. Lorraine. Well, I mentioned some, in the books. You can take berries and make your lips dark. Dark berries, blueberries. Pardon? Tattoos. I suggest people get tattoos. That's what I say. You tattoo it on. It's there for your life.
It's just my recipe with.
Just use egg white. Egg white.
For what?
I was thinking of eyeliner. Mascara, just use egg white. Brush it on. It thickens and hardens and darkens.
You know what I use is royal jelly mixed with raw carrot powder. It's a perfect mascara and it never runs. I've been using that for about 3 years. Royal jelly with a little carrot. I just discovered that. And it's also a great hair gel because all you need is just a tiny touch of it. It's cheaper than regular hair gel. So
but you're thinner and you may not perspire. A lot of people perspire around the eyes and that'll leak into the eye. That'll cause some burning in probably 50% of the people. If you start eating more fat, you might start having the same problem. But egg white brushed on is excellent for that. It thickens the eyelashes, and as long as you don't sit there and go like this with it, they're not going to crumble into that white powdery stuff. So you don't sit there like some men do and twirl your mustache, twirl your eyelashes, do you? And then you don't have to worry about that. It thickens them and darkens them. And if you want to make it even darker, you can put some blackberry juice with an egg white and put it on there, and that'll darken it. No, just straight. It will actually stain the lips for the day. It'll stain the lips for the day. If you sit there and lick your lips all day, it's going to come off quicker. Pardon? No, because then it will never stick. It'll just come right off. I've tried everything, so just using the straight.
I've tried it.
In my experiments, yes.
He's a cross-dresser.
So yeah, and also you can take the raspberry juice, and just put it on your cheeks for rouge, your chin, wherever else. Do you have a question, Barbara? If somebody's getting cold, if people getting cold, should we go in? Yeah, there's people. Let's go in. Grab your tape recorders.
Yeah.
No, there are seats in there. When Paris, I have not been able to study the phytoplankton yet, so I won't be able to give you an answer on that.
Good. It seems to be giving some people, like many things do, but this marine plankton seems to have extremely. He was growing them for his shellfish. That's how it happened. He grew shellfish, I don't know which sort, up in British Columbia, and he wanted to be able to feed them. So he started making phytoplankton in huge big. So then he started eating it and he had a cancer, very aggressive in his lung, like the asbestos one, and they said that he didn't have long to live. And he just inadvertently started eating this phytoplankton a teaspoon a day. And he was ready to go for the operation. They said it wouldn't help him to live much longer, but and when they just had a look 2 months later, they have become benign. So I mean that's happened to many people, but I just wanted to say, people are asking me about it, and I said, well, I don't know. I mean, it's best to go on a good raw diet, but if you're able to get that and it's an added thing in your oil,
Well, it's it would be a hard product to get.
I know it's
I've gone
alive.
through all kind of. Took me 4 years to get a supply of fresh algae water down here.
Yeah.
That the algae wasn't dry. They normally dry it, so I got them to send 4 4-gallon buckets down to do experiments with. But 1 year, even 1 year of experiments with the fresh algae doesn't give, can't draw any conclusions on it.
Right, yeah.
It's like I worked with this diet 28 years before I wrote the book.
I understand. I just thought you might have had people asking you, that was all. Just one other little quick one then. Organic pastures, I have heard a rumour that the only thing organic about organic pastures is the label. But I think that's extreme, and I wanted you to, so that we could be more out there with people who are saying, one or two, who know that there's things going on up there. What is happening with organic pastures?
Mark is not all that ethical.
Right.
My man who owns it.
Yeah.
I've watched him over the years feed them cooked oats.
Right.
Cooked organic oats. I don't give a shit if they're organic or not. If you're cooking them, you don't feed cooked grains to animals.
No.
He was feeding them organic rice bran because he could get it so cheap. The gibberellic acid causes swelling, and it causes the milk to be very bitter. So he just does a lot of things that are in his best monetary, his gain interest, rather than for the people he's servicing with their product.
Enough?
Pardon?
Is it good enough still to be taking?
We don't have anything better. I mean, it's better than Claravale because at least mainly their diet is grass,
Is it
fresh
still
grass.
It is still grass, not
Yeah.
bare land? Somebody said it's fairly bare in the summer.
The what?
Somebody told me that there wasn't much grass in the summer at times. And they had
He's got a sprinkler system on there.
Okay, fine.
I've walked the land.
Good. That's what I want to hear. I haven't been there.
It's grass all year round.
Thank you.
It's just he spends more, on water, irrigating. Well, water sprinkler is a sprinkler system for those pastures. And he rotates them onto the different pastures. And he's very good at that. He's just not good at, being honest and and caring and the feed that he gives them while he milks. So they may get 2 to 3 cups of grain a day that may not be the best grain in the world while he milks them.
Oh, I see. While they're in the store.
You've got to distract a cow when you're milking them. And getting them to eat grain, they love grain.
What's the problem with Clareville?
Pardon?
What's the problem with Clareville?
Clareville gets nothing green or raw. It's all baled hay. It's they don't get a blade of green grass. Nothing's grazed about those animals. And they're in a small area. But still better than pasteurized area. Okay, we've switched people here, positions.
Tawfiq
You
was
have a
next
question?
as well.
Go ahead. Yeah, and then go over there, because this ends this group for questions. Okay.
So now that there's no more cocoa cream, right?
Coconut
For
cream.
a while. And just this information about...
There is, you just have to make it.
From the coconut.
So that, for me, that means there isn't any class.
Okay.
But just with the information given today about the honey and the butter, could you do a honey butter cream combination that would help make up for the lack of coconut cream?
Won't do the same at all.
So it'll-
Coconut cream is about 60% solvent reactive. That means it's 60% cleansing. When you use the honey, butter, and cream mixtures, it all depends upon what your liver wants. You've got no say-so.
So is there any hope for us in the near term without coconut cream? I mean, what are we going to do?
Like you say, put up a 3x5 card at a high school, say, if somebody likes to break things, $8 an hour. Once every 5 to 6 weeks, they juice it for you and you have it. That's the only way you'll get it, or you'd have to take the time to do it yourself. One day, every 5 to 6 weeks.
For now, but there's going to be somebody coming up with a cottage industry to make sure.
Everybody's afraid, of the FDA. The FDA can shut them down. Cost them hundreds of thousands of dollars. I was very shocked that company did it, because I know them. I was very shocked that they did it, because I had a run-in with them, quite a while back. Absolutely. It's even more effective. But it doesn't go rancid.
It's just,
Yeah,
it's just sour.
Soured and fermented.
What's the best way to use coconut cream?
It depends on for what you want it.
Well, how should we use it? How do you recommend?
Well, in the recipe book, I recommend for detoxification, if you want to detoxify heavy metals, you use dark berries and the coconut cream together.
Yeah.
If you want to break down intestinal toxicity and thick tissue and the heavy scar tissue in the intestines, use coconut cream and pineapple.
Can you use it by itself? Just coconut cream, like 4 ounces of it, 3 or 4 ounces? That's what I did. Is that wrong?
Well,
Well, in shakes.
yeah, you can use it with anything. I usually never eat it alone. Something to direct it to a particular area. If you eat it alone, it's not a bad thing. You're just letting your body decide what nutrients it's going to use to detoxify. Let's say, I have the cucumber and coconut cream mixture. That's great for detoxing the nervous system. The coconut, the pineapple and coconut cream is also helpful for dissolving lymphatic plaque. That's why I have it for the lymphatic baths.
And what's the dairy for?
Pardon?
What's the dairy for?
Getting rid of metals. Dark berries are for getting rid of heavy metals. Raspberries are for getting rid of the lighter metals like iodine and aluminum.
How much coconut cream can you have at a time?
It depends upon the person's body weight and fat level in the
You
system.
have like about 3 or 4 ounces.
I would say for your size, I wouldn't go over 3 ounces. And I get nauseous.
Yeah, it's heavy.
Very heavy. Most people with your size, that they're beginning the diet, my size, 2.5 ounces. Until they've been on there a while, then up to 3 ounces.
It's not that hard to make coconut cream.
I know.
I do it all the
It
time.
just takes time. You have to be patient.
Not any harder than
Line up your juicers and start pounding away on cooking.
That's a good way to, if you need team effort to do it, yeah. Absolutely will work.
Just throw it in the juicer, that's it.
You've got to cut it small.
The white one.
You've got to cut it small. That's the answer.
You hack it out
You
of the shell
gotta
and
break it out.
Shell it and then just
Cut it small.
small and put it in the juicer.
Yeah.
Need a second lifetime.
A little bit at a time.
Well,
And it doesn't
I,
cook well.
you know, in the
Tiny.
latest versions of the book, what I did was I said, you can cut it, chop it, and then put it into a food processor and grate it rapidly. And then you just put that into the juicer, and it's even quicker.
Right.
You know, so that's a little bit quicker than putting in the thin slices and putting it, you know, into the juicer, you know, a little at a time.
Yeah.
Because the slicing takes time when you have to slice it thinly like that.
And I don't take the brown off. I don't know if anyone else does.
I don't.
I don't know.
Too much time. And they're good,
And
great
it's
B
good.
vitamins in it.
Yeah.
Great B vitamins.
Good.
If somebody's going to make a, you know, like a birthday cake and they want it to look presentable, then it's good. That's the only time I will peel the brown, the hull of the coconut.
But you still have to be careful if your body weight isn't up. You
Cause mass
can
detoxification,
mass detoxification.
Yeah. And you need a lot of fats to make sure that the toxicity is arrested. It doesn't cause damage.
Aajonus, they sell those shells dry and sun dry. I've came across those, you know, the coconuts. I've seen them actually in a Middle Eastern store. I have to ask whether, of course, what kind of method of processing they have, but they have a lot. I mean, you can buy them, they're dry. I don't know whether that's good if you still can squeeze
You
them.
mean if there's no water inside, or what do you mean?
There's no water down. There is, of course, they are in the dry and they have no shell. They shell. They won't work.
You don't want
They won't.
They won't juice well.
Yeah,
Yeah, they won't juice well at all.
They won't juice full stop.
You want the tender.
No, we want it firm and moist, hard and moist. Because if it's soft like Michael juice would today, you're not going to get a lot of juice out of it
Stop.
unless you run the pulp through many times.
So where do you buy them? From
Yeah, the best place, I found the best place to get the freshest ones is go to a fruit supplier, fruit market supplier, and get a fresh bag. Because any of those that go to a store have gone to another store first, and they get distributed from their distribution center. So,
wholesalers.
a wholesaler, that's it. Go to a wholesaler.
downtown San
On
Diego.
Jekyll Island, you know, and every place in New York when I lived there, I would go to, you know, like the Cuban district in New York and get them there, send them from Cuba. When I was in Jekyll Island, I'd get them from Haiti, you know, and we'd get 50 to a bag, and the people on the island that were on the diet, we'd split them up. We'd have 10 each, and there were 5 of us. And we'd, you know, 10 each that way. And only 1 out of 9 were bad. Yeah, that was very good. But you get them fresh like that. And you make sure that your supplier orders them the fresh bags of, not the ones that have sat around for a couple of weeks. No, it just depends on if they've been dropped or bruised. That's the problem. Because once they've been dropped or bruised, then they will start deteriorating, whether it's refrigerated or not.
Have you ever tried to juice a coconut in a cold house? Like 62 degrees?
Well, I don't use the heat in my house, and I live in the mountains of Malibu, so my house gets down to about 42, 43 degrees.
The fat's solid and it doesn't come out.
It comes out. I just put it through several times, and it comes out just.
It comes out. It goes
Comes
in,
out.
Goes in with the pulp, and it doesn't come out. And they put the pulp back in several times.
Yeah,
So the first time it comes out, it's all in the pulp.
yeah.
And inside the machine, none comes out. Well, what comes out at the
Mine
bottom is
does.
the liquid, and no fat. The fat stays in the machine because it's too cold.
Right, but as you put it through several times, it'll just warm itself.
I didn't know that. Now I know how to do it.
Or turn your heat on. I don't
I'm not
turn
gonna
the
do
heat
that.
on. Okay, you asked, you asked. You
No, I didn't.
I like to skip her. I always play this game with her.
You already had a question. I never had a question.
Okay, Joe, go ahead. We'll go this way.
Okay, I have a friend that is detoxing mercury, she says, and she's on a vegan diet, and she has very dry skin on her legs, and ridiculously dry. She thinks she's getting enough fat from avocado and coconut, and that's not the case, is it?
Just know it takes
butter, right?
animal fats to protect the body. There's no way you can protect the body with coconut cream or avocado. They're more of a water-soluble fat than that. And there's very little oil-soluble oil in the coconut, and almost none in the coconut. And the avocado, if you rub avocado in your skin, it just dries into a cake.
Is she going to be getting detoxification by juicing various vegetables? I mean, she doesn't do celery and parsley. She does beets and whatever she can find at the farmer's market. Is that going to detoxify her body?
It'll eat her body in pieces, yeah. I mean, her body's going to eat its own cells, and it's going to detoxify itself, but contaminate itself while it does it.
That's not a good way to get rid of the mercury in the body, is it?
She's not going to get rid of it. She's just going to recirculate most of it.
So how would she get rid of it?
Do the diet.
Which she won't do.
I tried to take her to this meeting, but it wouldn't come.
No. She needs to read the books.
She needs to do your diet to be able to detoxify.
She needs to read the books.
Yeah.
You can get her to read the book.
I got her to
Even
read-
coming here, there's no way I'm going to give enough, so I'm not going to be able to seduce her into opening her mind.
No,
The
I-
book seduces people.
Well, she
into-
did read the book. She said it's a lot like what she's doing, but it's not, right? No.
She's not eating animal fat. She's not doing anything like
She
all
won't eat
this
any
stuff.
animal fat. She won't do the dairy. These things are hard to her. So she's not going to get anywhere, even though, and she is not. Her skin is ridiculously dry. I've never seen such dry skin.
Half of my cancer clients have been long-term vegetarian.
Okay, and did you not say that you've never seen a healthy vegetarian?
No, I've seen three
Three also?
out of about 2,300. But they're a rare breed. They were, all three were men.
Okay, well, I'll let her listen to that.
Okay. Do you have a question?
Yeah, I have a couple, if possible. Can you expand on the typing, like the body typing or genetic typing? I know there's that one page, if I'm not mistaken, in the book.
Okay. When I talk about blood type, I'm not talking about, it's strictly acid or alkaline type. That's all I'm talking about. I'm not talking about A, B, A positive, A negative, RH negative, anything, right? RH positive. There's nothing to do with the blood type. It's the blood acidity type. You're either a high alkaline or you're a high acidic blood type or you're a neutral type. If you're, like I spell it out in the book, if you're lean and have a lot of energy and you hold a tan well, you've got very acidic blood. You need to eat less red meat and more white meat. That's the only difference.
If you eat the red, what happens?
You're likely to get more hyperactive, get too thin, even thinner, not able to put on weight, and you might be a real jerk. Impatient, irritable. Pardon?
But you digest it okay?
Yeah,
really
that's
not an
fine.
issue.
That's not an issue. Right? That's not an issue at all. You know, a lot of people do become irritable. Some people like being irritable. They feel it makes them aggressive, you know. I know a very wealthy man that's worth hundreds of millions of dollars that came up out of, you know, the slums of New York City. You know, he's worth several $100 million, and he just went around intimidating everybody. He's going to die for 5 years now, and his whole life has changed. He wants me to get the Nobel Peace Prize because it's made him a peaceful person. So now he can enjoy his hundreds of millions of dollars. You know? So, but you know, he enjoyed being that way. You know, but now he doesn't. You know, he's an old man. He's 72 years old, and you know he can't keep a relationship if he doesn't stay on the diet. His last wife says, you go over, you know, she only did the diet about 50%. But she said, if you ever go off the diet, I'm divorcing. They got divorced last year. But he didn't go off the diet. Pardon?
How many millions did she get? That's a big
Oh, she got a couple of houses, and you know, she did very well. For a 10-year marriage, that's pretty good.
I'm on the, I'd say, you know, probably 50%, 60% I'm on the diet. And I love coffee. And I love it. I love the taste. I love everything about it. What can I do to, you know, compensate in any way? You know,
Every time you want to go for coffee, you go for fresh vegetable juice. And you get a different kind of a rush. You get a refreshing taste. You know, the enzymes will go in and liven the body. It'll wake it up without, you know, damaging and kicking like caffeine does. And when you have those enzymes from your fresh juice going to the system, especially with a little bit of honey in it, you know, it wakes the appetite up, alkalinizes the blood, and that's the best way to do it.
With the green, it's nice and a little bit of that.
Yeah, also that too, yeah.
and has my liver damage or adrenals or, you know, just drinking every day?
Well, coffee usually doesn't affect the liver too much. It affects the heart, it affects the brain, the kidneys, you know, the nervous system. You know, that's where it has propensity to store in those tissues, usually not the liver. Some people, if they're alcoholics along with the coffee, it'll damage the liver. Like when I was an alcoholic, I drank 11 cups of, you know, of coffee a day. You know, I had to have the coffee to get me going because I had blood and bone cancer. So I had the coffee and benzodrine to, you know, to boost me during the day, and then a fifth of gin at night to bring me down. Then you're going to have some, you know, caffeine damage to the liver associated with the liver.
One last question. I don't know if this is from high school. I was an athlete and I borrowed one of my teammates' shoes. And since then, you know, the athlete's foot, whatever, you know, itching. I don't know if it was from that or from the acidity or the coffee. I don't know. But to this point, the itching isn't really there anymore. But now my toenails are just like, I can just cut them all off. I mean, they're just like, completely
Dry,
yeah,
cracked.
nasty. Yeah.
Okay, this is where something is contagious. fungus that live on the skin is contagious. Yeast that live on the skin is contagious. It's like if they're fungus, they spread on the surface. Crabs are contagious because they live on the skin. They can transfer from one body to another. The internal stuff is not contagious. It's never contagious. Syphilis, any of it. That's an internal property, and it's not contagious unless you're injecting blood or serums from someone and inject it into your own. That can't be called contagious. That's contamination. But contagions that live on the skin, or agents that live on the skin, can be contagious coming into contact with somebody. Whether that agent, that fungus, that yeast, all yeasts are fungus, all molds are fungi. So, if that has something to feed on, they will keep living. Antibiotics cause a tremendous amount of mold-damaged cells that athlete's foot and a lot of other fungus live on very easily. Eczema is a fungus. Psoriasis is partially fungus. And they will live, and they are contagious if you have the elements that it wants to feed on in your skin and or on your skin. So it could be from that. But coffee and caffeine and theobromine from chocolates cause molds because there's a high amount of metal toxicity associated with caffeine. It carries heavy metals with it. So does theobromine. That's why it causes nerve damage. That's why it has an affinity to the neurological system and the brain.
From outside.
No, it's part of the bean. So when they cook it, those heavy metals, the mercury, the lead, all those trace heavy metals become free radicals after cooking and roasted. So then you've got the caffeine bound magnetically with these heavy metals. That's why it causes that stimulation. It pumps up adrenaline. It pumps up cortisol. It pumps up neurological hormones.
Where do the metals come from in the bean? Is that part of the...
Part of that, any structure out there, any creature has metals in it.
So even the bean plant itself has metals in it?
Everything you eat has metals in it.
But they're worse in coffee beans.
But they're in trace amounts, and they're always linked with other minerals and vitamins and other nutrients. So it's a complex, beneficial nutrient. Trace metals are a benefit, even strychnine, if it's not a free radical.
So it's this high
It's a
heat
nutrient.
processing that makes it
The
untenable?
cooking breaks it, fractionates those
Cooking.
bonds.
Okay.
Cooking and processing. So then you've got this caffeine that goes in. Caffeine goes into your cells and into your tissues, and it causes such contamination that bacteria and parasites can't eat it. Virus even have difficulty breaking it down, but fungi feeds on it well. Same way with plastics. Plastics are made from vegetable oils mainly, over hydrogenated vegetable oils. So now when the auto industry and the plastic industry, their greatest conundrum is molds that eat on plastic. So they spent 20 years before plastic became a major factor in production to get those molds not to break down the plastic item, because they would mold within a few years. they just start rotting from mold. So they spent 20 years perfecting antifungals to make plastic what it is today. Now, nobody can break it down. It gets into your body, you're plastic. Not easy to get out anymore. But anyway, fungi loves damage, caffeine damaged and theobromine damaged cells.
If I cut coffee alone,
That could probably reduce tremendously
because I don't
your
touch,
fungus.
I don't touch sugar. I mean, a lot of the other acidic.
Sugar doesn't cause a lot of illness. Caffeine, theobromine. Things that are neurologically bound, things that are bound with neurological toxins, and those are always heavy metals. Mercury, lead, cadmium, iodine, all those nerve irritants.
So those cases of the people eating the raw fish, are they actually detoxifying and it's not actually the mercury that's causing them to get all the symptoms?
Yes, it's causing detoxification. As long as they're eating it raw, they're eating it cooked, they're in trouble. Look at the Japanese. I mean, incredible race to eat all this raw fish. You get the lowest rate of stomach cancer because of it. Except when they're in this country, the rate's back up there because they're eating our garbage food. Do you have, you have a question?
Yeah. I seem to have a problem with raw milk. I've tried it even at leaving it in a room temperature for 24 hours, tried it with the honey. I still have a problem with it. It makes me tired. And it also, I just feel bloated and I just don't feel great.
Do you have any cramping?
No cramping.
Then you don't have an allergy to the milk.
Okay.
You've got a detoxification of your nervous system,
Okay.
or your glandular system, or both.
Okay.
And that makes you tired. It's trying to get you to relax and sleep a lot, to heal and restructure those glands or neurological system. And some people have to go through that. It could be 3 to 6 months.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
So you just leave your milk for eating later in the day.
Okay.
So cramping is a key indicator.
Cramping is a key indicator that you've got an allergy. That's mainly from drinking milk cold, because if the milk goes in cold, the stomach contracts, doesn't secrete hydrochloric acid. This milk moves into the duodenum without proper digestion. Casein and lactate get into the blood without digestion. And that causes cramping in the intestines for the part that's moving down undigested, and that gets into the bloodstream causes different reactions.
But if it wasn't cold, it might not. Perhaps it wouldn't cause an allergic reaction. Only
Right.
if it's cold.
Yeah. Well, some people just lack, hydrochloric acid in their stomach, and they lack other enzymes for digesting casein and lactate.
What about if you haven't eaten anything and you're detoxifying and you're getting very bad cramping? Is that
Those are toxins passing through your intestinal walls, causing cramping.
that has nothing to do, obviously, to allergy?
Doesn't have anything to do with allergen. If you have an allergen to milk, you'll know it 20 minutes after eating it.
What if you eat something and you get like prickles on your skin?
That's just nerve detoxification.
Cold keeper's okay.
Cold kefir is fine. Once the milk is already pre-digested by the bacteria, it's fine.
You mean cold? You mean fridge cold?
Refrigerated, yeah.
You can drink it cold.
Right out of the refrigerator cold. Because it's already pre-digested.
Okay, I can realize that.
Cramping.
Anywhere in your body.
Pardon? Some people don't have the enzymes to digest it right away. Page 3 or 4, like I said in the book, if you've got a true allergy and you have those symptoms of cramping or vomiting or diarrhea within 20 minutes after drinking of milk, or a combination of those symptoms, then you should only drink 2 to 4 ounces a day for about 3 months until your body sets up a new process. And, 9 times out of 10, it will be corrected in that amount of time. If it happens every time you eat it, yeah, absolutely.
And these foods that you know anybody can
Just milk occasionally.
Everything else, usually okay.
Never a problem anymore.
Just a small question.
I don't do small questions.
No matter what recommend my God, you're gonna want to play.
Well, you're playful. I can play with you.
Someone bought me a whole bunch of Mennonite butter and accidentally got the salted butter. I'm wondering if, I know the salt's not good, but will the actual capacity or good qualities of the butter be affected because it has salt in it?
Because it causes dehydration.
Yeah, I noticed that when I went to New Zealand and Australia, because I only had salted butter at one spot, organic, and I was totally dehydrated from it. I thought, how can this little bit of salt be dehydrating me? And I did.
Quickly.
And
If
was
it's then,
salted
those sodium molecules clump. And when the body, that's how the body eats. It has ions inside of a cell. And it attracts other ions floating in the bloodstream, transporting nutrients. Now, when you eat raw food, you've got all these complex couplings. So when you go to eat, let's say you've got a potassium molecule carrying some glucose or some glucagon and some vitamin A and some starch molecules. So you've got a complex meal here, a smorgasbord. And the cell opens up and takes it all in, and it gets a whole array of nutrients, and it's very satisfying. When you cook food, everything is fractionated. Everything clumps. And salt causes the same reaction. It causes clumping. So what happens is the sodium molecule comes past the cell, and the cell needs H2O, and you've got all this H2O bound with this clumped salt. The magnetism is so great outside the cell that it rips the guts, which are the ions, out of the cell, and the cell will never eat again, shrivels like a raisin, and dies. 2 little bitty grains of salt will destroy 2 million red blood cells.
So I had a doctor do a live blood analysis on me.
Those are the most ridiculous things.
Really? Because he said that
If I take any of you, a bunch of you, and I smear you on a glass plate, I mean flatten you and squeeze your guts out all over, how is that going to be able to identify what's going to happen? You're going to have microbes, you're going to have everything come about instantly. As soon as I smear your body and your fluids onto a glass plate, you take live bloods and you mash them, they're no longer live blood anymore. You've changed the whole chemistry. You've oxidized it. You've changed in a whole environment where parasites and bacteria will form within seconds. So it doesn't have any appearance to what the blood is. But when any of them analyze mine, I don't get into that argument because he goes, don't buy it, and I say, oh, I have got lots of bacteria and parasites in my blood. Oh, good. Good. I'll be clean and strong. So I don't fool with that.
But when they see crystals of uric acid, which wouldn't be changed like that in a second.
Oh
in the
yeah, if
blood.
there's a sugar molecules around it, it certainly will.
Okay. I'm just interested because they do see uric acid in the live blood cell
But
analysis
everybody has uric acid.
in crystal form.
Almost all of them, because they're eating cooked food.
Yeah, but if you're on a raw, she's on a raw diet.
Oh, that's old toxic stuff. And you're going to have
Said
it.
it was high in sodium, low lactic sodium, and there was a whole bunch of uric acid and
Oh, good. Uric acid. You wanted to get rid of that old toxic uric acid. The only uric acid that will crystallize is from cooked meats, cooked protein. That's the only uric acid that will crystallize.
The free radicals show up right away as well on the slide.
Yeah, as soon as you flatten, blood cells, you're going to have lead, any kind of metal that, let's say, it's trace amount and it's healthy and good, they're going to show up right away. It's dark and black all around.
So it's not, you don't think that procedure is useful for any type of analysis?
I haven't found it good for anything. They may be the people who have that science down for their particular perspective of approach for health. They have it down to where they can help people who are not on this kind of a diet. But it has no bearing and no use. In fact, it's harmful. What they have to suggest and their conclusions on this diet.
When I consume vegetable oils, particularly omega-3 oils like flax, I get eczema.
Let me finish that first. Take, for example, somebody who's been on a very bad diet all their lives, and they've got root canal problems and infection. Now, if a person is going to do the diet right and correct it, it's better that they go to that dentist and follow his procedure. Because they probably are not going to get well very quickly on this diet if they're not going to follow the diet well enough to heal. If the person's, badly, if the person is very weakened overall and they have this kind of infection. So if you go to a live cell, so-called live cell analysis, and if you flatten the cells on a plate and expose them to oxygen, the cells are no longer alive. So the whole idea that it's live cell analysis is absurd. It's a misnomer. It's ridiculous. So you're not watching the behavior of live cells. You're watching the mass quick oxidization and the destruction of what was live.
They will change their reaction anyway. If they're outside the body, they're
Absolutely.
in a different community.
That's it.
They won't behave the same.
And then you mash them at the same time. So it's a misnomer. But their particular perspective works in a certain amount of people who are on those kind of diets.
Exactly. It does, because they see better results, and so therefore that's what they do. But it's not for this.
It's certainly not ideal for this diet. It's harmful for this diet, people on this diet. Okay, I guess we...
So he was asking you a question.
Yeah,
Oh, yes, I'm
let's
sorry.
get vegetable oils for a minute. So when I eat omega-3 rich vegetable oils like flax, I get eczema.
You get a what?
Eczema.
Eczema.
I get a rash. I get a skin rash. And, through research and some muscle testing, I conclude that I don't do well with vegetable oils, particularly omega-3. I believe it's enzyme deficiency. I avoid them. I do really well with like salmon oil, animal fat.
That whole omega-3, omega-6 thing is just a contorted concept. You don't need many omega-3s or omega-6s if you're eating raw fat.
Right.
And you don't know whether it's 6s or 3s that you need. There are theories out there, but they don't hold up in actual practice with people.
Right.
Here the person's, theoretically, the omega-3 is what they need, but yet it makes them very toxic and sick. So Udo Erasmus doesn't have it down. Price doesn't have it down. Nobody has it down because they're always trying to take something apart and concentrate it and throw things more out of balance. I do that with butter and cream, but it's still a whole product, and it's a product for the human body. The vegetable oil is not part of a human being's diet. Not built to digest it. We don't have the body soluble fats, but you have water-soluble fats that need to be broken down more than oil-soluble. So you don't have the water-soluble fat reaction with the oil, so you're losing about 2/3 of the benefit. But I will be picking up some juicing machinery when I leave for Thailand next Sunday. I'll be gone until January 22nd. So when I'm there, I'm going to pick up some equipment to juice coconut the way they do it there. We have been trying to order it for 2 years from this country. No one will deliver to this country. Well, I've got these machines which, they're a grinder, and you cut, first you've got a machine that will score the coconuts in half, and you break them in half, and then you put it on this grinder, and it makes everything into a grated coconut, and then you take that and you press that through. There are various kinds of presses that they have. And the one that is mainly used is a hydraulic press, where they put it in a burlap bag and then press it. And that's mainly what I get in Thailand and Cambodia and Vietnam and Malaysia and Indonesia, because that's mainly what they've been using. But now they've got juicers that are, hydraulic only. They turn and churn and squeeze and press like the green power and the green star juicers do. Yeah, gear juicing. So I'll just see what's going to be available, because they only make those machines in India. A lot of coconuts in India.
They have it in Burma, and they were just walk down the street, and every other vendor would have it.
Absolutely, yep. But they're all made in India. All the machinery is made in India. And I couldn't get, in 2 years I was not able to get one company to send one here to ship the equipment here.
Why?
77 he would milk 7 coconuts.
Yeah.
Meat and everything. I have like a quart.
Yeah. I'll get a quart for 50 cents. A quart of coconut cream for 50 cents.
What's the difference between this and like a green?
The green has very little fat.
They don't have fat?
Very little fat in those.
Even when it's like thick inside?
That's just gelatin. That's, an in-between stage. Not really much fat in that at all. It takes mature coconuts to get the fat.
And if you just juice them, if you have a sturdy juicer, and you take this inside of the coconut and juice it, would that do the job?
Yeah, we can do it. It's just very time consuming.
Coconut cream is.
Yeah.
But it's usually the mature meat, not the jelly.
Not the jelly, the actual thick.
Yeah, the thick white.
Oily stuff.
Meat. Yeah, I do it with my green power, but it's so time consuming.
To break the shell, this is
You just have to keep rejuicing it.
So
That just means the coconuts are not quite hard yet. So you have to put it through several times.
the product, Whole Foods.
Yeah. That's the oil,
That's
isn't
what
it?
he did about that.
This is just the oil.
Yeah. They have a lot kind of oils now. But not only in the jars. I think they don't have glass jars, but they have like metal jars. It's that you don't like that.
Because any kind of oil will deteriorate the metal,
Yeah.
so you're going
some
to
of
get
that
metal
kind of
poisoning.
So that right there, what do you?
This isn't a good one. I mean, the expeller press it, but still the temperature is around 118 degrees. I got one company in Philippines to make it, and another company in Thailand. But the Thailand company is exclusive for us in Los Angeles, so they don't produce enough yet. The one in the Philippines, they sell theirs at www.wildernessfamilynaturals.com. If you look for the Philippine fermented coconut oil.
I have parts of that for sale. What's the plan if you do get that machine? Then you're just going to make somebody set up a little cottage industry and producing it for people in LA.
James will be setting that up.
So then we'll be able to get it from once a month though.
Before we had that company making the coconut cream for us, what I did was I took a 3x5 card and put it up in a high school gym, and I put need somebody who likes to break things, $8 an hour. I got lots of calls. I just chose African American end on the football team who had lots of energy, and I'd had him juice about 8 to 10 coconuts for me about every 5 to 6 weeks. If you preserve it like I instruct in the recipe book with lime juice, it'll last for that long. Because that's a grueling job, breaking the coconut, prying out, chopping it, cutting it up, putting it through the juicer. That's time-consuming, a lot of work.
Don't smell that great when you open them. They're not totally molded, but they smell really good.
Well, yeah, all those coconuts are even better. They work better, they're just not enjoyable. Yeah, it's even better. It'll clean you quicker.
Coloration, like
Some of them are like totally black. The husk total mold.
Yeah, well, that's a little too much detoxification.
Can you bring us the machine?
Pardon?
Can you bring us one of the machines?
Which one?
The coconut one.
Oh, these are huge machines. They're about 15, 18 grand each. And they've got to have 3 of them for the process. So they're industrial grade. No, these are industrial big machines.
Okay, the stuff I'm thinking about is somebody put together some years.
No, yeah.
Grind down.
Yeah, no, these are heavy duty industrial grade. Okay, we'll just go ahead and start. Is there anybody that has any kind of subject that they would like me to talk about before we get started?
Avian flu?
That's the best one to pick. Yes, it is. What a joke avian flu is. You have to understand the United States medical profession and the pharmaceutical companies. They have been geared since Rockefeller and Carnegie took over the universities back in the early 1900s to gear you to be afraid of nature. All the Asian flus are named after, all the flus are named after some kind of monkey or pig or swine flu, or some kind of bird. They always want to address it on some animal. If you understand viruses, you understand that they're not contagious. The whole idea of a vaccine for a flu is preposterous. A flu is a body of amino acids, proteins. They are not alive. You can inject a fertile petri dish with a spike of petri dish with every kind of flu you can imagine, and they will not multiply. They exist as is. Then when you introduce live cells into it, all of a sudden they start multiplying. That's because the cell is in an environment that's not natural for it. It gets toxic. Bacteria is prevented from growing in these petri dishes because they make them antibacterial, antiparasitical, and the natural process of detoxification is bacteria and parasites. If a cell can't use bacteria and parasites, it reverts to making solvents, soaps, which are flu, which are the flu, the viruses. That is what it is. It's just a soap. And there are about 300,000 varieties of those soaps, because just like we may have 5 or 6 types of liver virus called hepatitis, because they're for specific types of cells in the liver. If the liver were to detox completely with one virus, then the whole liver would shut down and a person would die. So the liver could never detoxify properly. Well, you have all these complexities within the body of a cell. It has its glands, its prostaglandin reactions, everything within that cell. So you've got, pardon?
It's a universe, basically.
Absolutely. Yep. So it's got its complex of virals that it's needed for its internal self, and then for the gland we have the viruses that are necessary for that. So you've got about 300,000 categories. You've got subcategories within that, like we do in hepatitis. But they are not contagious. You cannot give them. Plus, they're all retroviruses. That means that the body finishes making and utilizing the virus within 48 to 72 hours. Then the body goes on, or the cell goes on, to making a different virus to clean some other part of that particular intracellular function or body or part or system. So the idea of making a flu shot is the most preposterous thing there is, because if you put out a vaccine, it's at least 6 months behind any any virus that ever existed. Now, the great avian flu, what do they want to pull out of the vaults? Anybody remember the swine flu in the 70s? Who was our vice president at the time? Rockefeller. 5 pharmaceutical houses he owns. So what did he do? He got Ford to go on the TV and take the swine flu shot. A Dr. M.D. McBean and a consumer advocate, Ida Honorath, here from San Diego, were pretty famous at the time. Ida Honorath had a syndicated consumer advocacy radio show that was syndicated in somewhere around 600 markets in the United States. And they filed suit against Ford, Rockefeller, the Surgeon General, and who else did they? Somebody else in the government about that. In the company that produced it. And they were so influential and were on it like a hip pocket that they got the media to come in and watch the poll places where they were giving the swine flu. Now, the swine flu, we paid $8 billion to give swine flu to everybody. The second week within the second week, 2,300 people had died within 2 days, 2.5 days of receiving the swine flu shot. So, of course, it was pulled out, went into the vaults. What do you think is coming out of the vaults for this swine flu epidemic when Bush paid $7.2 billion, $7.1 billion? It's the same swine flu, and they're paying $7.1 billion to relabel it.
Why will it kill? I mean, the virus, why will in a vaccine become so dangerous when usually shouldn't do anything?
Oh, it
if
should.
you give it to people, why will people die then?
Because it has aluminum, it has formaldehyde, and they have thimerosal.
So they're not really dying of the what they call crippled virus. They're dying because of what's in the vaccine with the other stuff.
Partially, but you have to understand that some people will have an allergic reaction to an infused toxin of any sort. And if the cell hasn't made the virus, if the cells of your body haven't made the virus, it's going to look at that as an attack or an invasion, and possibly a road to say, wait a minute, I'm not supposed to be alive, I'm going to die in this kind of a situation. And that's what's called anaphylactic shock. But the anaphylaxis can come from either the poisons in the vaccine or the actual conjugated virus itself, because it's not natural. Yes?
Would it be correct to say that when you contract, like some people in the Asian continent contract bird flu, they're not dying of the flu, they're dying of complications?
They're not even getting the flu.
Well,
It's an all absurd. A person cannot get a bird flu. It doesn't jump species. It's an absurdity.
Right. Well, they're saying that that's what's happening. Why are they saying that?
Well, everybody gets a flu because they need detoxification. They want people to be afraid of nature and then embrace medication.
What if we eat a bad bird?
Or live with it?
That's not going to harm you.
Well, apparently there's. What's the provocation behind? Is it some disinformation campaign? Because
It is disinformation. It's complete
Because
disinformation.
the Chinese government is certainly in a state of panic over disinformation.
You have to understand that there's other ways of overthrowing people in their governments. And one of them is disinformation. And we know the CIA is good with that. And the military is good with that. So how easy is it to, if you're dealing with a country like China, not high, they didn't put any of their assets in public relations and the media. They know now because the white people control the media. The Eurasian people, Eurasians and the Caucasian races own almost all, like 90% of all the communication networks that exist. And if they want to, well, just imagine what happened. They came out with the SARS so-called epidemic. What happened to the trade and the tourism in Asia? It went down 80%. 80%. Huge deficit it created. You take a look at that and you say, oh, what an easy way to do it. Now, when I was last year, I was in Vietnam twice, Cambodia twice, and Thailand twice, Indonesia, Malaysia. And I went to 3 different flocks that they had slaughtered in Vietnam. And, it's easy. It would cost me $2,200 to $8,000 to have laboratory tests here. I can get it for $110 to $200 there. So I had quite a few of those the destroyed chicken remains analyzed. There was no such thing as a virus that they spoke about. All animals, all creatures have virus, but there was no predominant one that was causing any kind of deterioration in those animals. It is like what happened 8 years ago here in the East Coast. It went in, the health department, FDA went in, the USDA, and slaughtered herds and herds of sheep without testing the sheep. Went in and called them contaminated and slaughtered them. Now I knew two of the shepherds who had 2 flocks that were slaughtered. There was no human rights involved. They just wiped out any kind of right that they had. They didn't have to prove that there was anything wrong. There was no cause of action. There was no probable cause to say that they had any kind of disease. What is the point in doing that?
Fear.
Pardon?
Fear.
Destroy the small farmer so that the big conglomerate can take over. And the FDA's been in bed. You know, the last 11 heads of the FDA have gotten, as soon as they left the FDA, have been CEOs of a pharmaceutical company. That's quite a major tie. 11. You know, so you look at that and you see how it's all interlinked. And this is all disinformation to make a lot of money and to play their game of monopoly. We will win and you will go down.
So when they say you died from complications of flu, what is that? They died. Somebody died of something, right? How do they work the information? I mean, a simple statement of complications from the flu. What does that mean?
Well, let's say you have a person who has cancer, and they go into the hospital, and they get antibiotics and well, let's take my mother for example. 5 years ago, she got breast cancer. I had to hear about it from an aunt or an uncle. And I called her and I said, Mom, you've read my books, you through all that. I know you're an RN, you're a nurse. You're not going to have chemo or radiation, are you? And I know that you're going to have the surgery because you believe in surgery. She said, yes, but I'm not going to have a mastectomy. I'm just going to have a lumpectomy. I'm going to have, the lymph nodes that are involved removed. I said, okay, why don't you go back to eating raw foods again or 50% raw again? Oh, I'm healthier now. I don't need to do that, because 20 years ago she was having a lot of complications, she and my father. So they went on 50% raw diet. And they got a lot better, and they stayed on it for about 6 years. So I thought, I'd talk them into doing it again. But no, she felt infallible at this point. Who can feel infallible at 82 years old? So she had the lumpectomy and then had radiation. And I said, Mom, if you have radiation, what is behind those breasts? You've got lungs behind those breasts. At your age, you damage those lungs, and what's going to happen? She's still on oxygen 5 years. She's still happy she did it. So what happened is she went deaf about 2 years ago. So she's had different kinds of hearing aids that don't work. So she had an implant, $80,000 for this implant. Open up the skull. They put these electrodes that are attached to this hearing aid. They attached like 60 electrodes into her cochlea, and then that implanted on the skull, in the skull, behind the ear. She did on this side. And they have to use all these computers to fine-tune it for her hearing. And she got a serious infection about 2 months ago. So they put her in antibiotics. Antibiotics destroyed her taste buds, destroyed her appetite. She hasn't eaten in 2 months. She's now skin and bones. She's probably going to die within 2 weeks. I just left her a few days ago. Only way I could get her to eat again, and I mean it's like night and day. And my brothers and my father are there, and I gave her little bitty cubes of papaya. And I would give her 5 to 7 of them. She would eat. On Thanksgiving Day, in the morning, I gave her 5 of them, and she ate 4 meals that day. Now, why wasn't my father giving it to her all this other time? Because I told him about it. So they saw it again for the second time because I did it 2 weeks ago. But anyway, that's beside the point. The point is that the complications, the doctor's not going to say, well, the antibiotics did it. They're going to say, my mother died of complications. Cancer, surgery, everything. When the medical profession gets a hold of you, they are out to alter your system. They don't work with the system. They want to alter it to their needs. And their needs are mechanical. And you cannot adapt to mechanically. Most people can't. 90% of people can't, so they're going to have complications. So when anybody dies of anything, it's not the cancer that killed them, it was the pneumonia. They didn't die of AIDS, they died of the pneumonia. But what created the pneumonia? The AZT and the antibiotics. They're not going to blame themselves. So all they have to do is go say, oh, we've had how many deaths? How many people die of flu every year? Thousands. Over the planet, at least 1 million a year die of flu.
The complications. That's the part I'm still trying to understand.
If the body is highly toxic and you're infusing it with toxins at the same time you're trying to detoxify, you've got too many things going on. So that is, let's say those toxins settle in the heart or in the brain or in the liver or in the pancreas, and you destroy the tissue.
You don't have enough channels to get rid of all these stuff.
That's right.
Coming out.
Yeah.
But, it's a chemical reaction. You got to get rid of it before you create a new one.
So if you have a certain level of a virus in your body and the body is somehow reacting to it, you die from diarrhea and
Never die from diarrhea. That's a farce.
That's what they're saying. I mean,
Nobody dies from diarrhea.
Make replacements if you make replacements.
Eventually they wither away and they die of something. So
they can't eat. The only time somebody's going to die is if they can't eat. I had a guy who went on this diet, and he experienced diarrhea for 2.5 years. And he was kept his weight up to as big as Mike there. And that's, even with all that diarrhea, he maintained that weight for the whole 2.5 years. No problem.
That was from your diet for complications of diarrhea. I'm not saying you died from diarrhea.
Not on this diet.
Yeah, but once again, it's the complications from whatever the reaction is.
If you have dehydration.
Right.
Yeah, you could die of dehydration. But that's because you're not eating the right foods to get the right kind of H2O to be utilized properly in the body. You'll be drinking water, Gatorade, or, garbage like that. And of course, your body can only utilize about 10% of that H2O. So many people are going to die, and it's usually the elderly that do it, or people who are on heavy medications and have been on medications for extended periods.
So is that a genetic disposition then? Some people are more vulnerable than others?
No, it's just a matter of habits. Of course, if your genes are made up of, you do what your parents did, you eat the same kind of garbage your parents did, you're going to carry on the same weaknesses because you're not altering it. Like diabetes runs on my mother's side. I've got 8 cousins who were diabetic by the time they were 15. I was one of those people who was, part of that, so I was the 9th. I don't have any juvenile diabetes. And that's unheard of. You don't reverse juvenile diabetes, so-called. But I changed my diet. I took care of it. My liver, my pancreas completely healed and rebuilt. I'm not part of that genetic pool anymore.
Would that also be, are there also good contraindications to like some of the hepatitis that's going around now? Can you actually sort of calm that down so it's not a factor anymore?
Hepatitis is the last defense of the liver to try to cleanse itself.
Right.
Because you can't, it's so toxic, and it's mainly toxic among people who are drug users and alcohol abusers. Because it damages the liver. It's got, you hold the alcohols terribly, or using cocaine or amyl nitrate, any of those kind of things that go to the liver, then the bacteria and the parasites can no longer clean the liver. So the only thing left is virus. You have to remember that bacteria and parasites, they consume decaying tissue or dead tissue and reduce it to a very small fraction of waste. Like we made 7 to 14 pounds of food a day and have 1 to, a half to 1 pound feces, the next day. So we've reduced it tremendously. Well, bacteria and parasites can reduce the ratio of 100 to 1. 100 times their weight and reduce it to 1% waste product. That's fantastic. So we want those bacteria, we want the parasites to consume them, because when we use virus, they're not alive. There's no consumption. There's no alteration. There's just the protein bodies that go in there and disassemble it, and then the lymph system is responsible to dissolve it further and to perspire it out the skin, or take it out the tear ducts, the mucous membranes, the earwax.
So it sounds to me like, if I've been hearing you correctly over the last couple of times I've heard you, it sounds to me like the medical profession is actually in the business of interrupting the body's natural processes.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
I got a question there. You're talking about bacteria. How much, what is the difference between aerobic and anaerobic in the way that you look at it? I mean, I've read a lot of anaerobic, because they don't use oxygen. They produce very, very strong toxins, while the ones which are aerobic are actually very healthy for the body. And we have a lot of them in our mouth. They are all aerobic, and they really actually help the body detoxify. But when it becomes anaerobic, this is something completely different. For example, the bacteria that is in the teeth, in the root canals, they are devastating. I mean, they almost killed me 4 months ago. Okay, so there is a difference between a bacteria and another bacteria. I mean, depending on what mode of toxins they are producing. You said they are reducing the waste, but I think probably this only applies for aerobic ones, which are using the oxygen.
Nope.
So what do you do about the toxins that almost killed me 4 months ago? I mean, I couldn't live with those in my mouth.
Well, you had so much toxicity and not enough of the right nutrients to break it down. And if you don't have the right nutrients, your body can't support itself in its natural function. So I have seven root canals, and I'm almost 60 years old, and I don't have any problem with it.
Because your body is detoxifying properly, yes.
Exactly. I've got the nutrients
you have
to
the
take
means
care
of detoxifying your liver, your
properly.
kidney, your skin, they're all working. Okay.
And the nerves
of course,
to the teeth, yeah.
Yes, and your immune system handles those toxins properly.
Correct.
But if you are in a toxic state, then that's a different story.
That's right. But the idea is
bacteria will be a good thing then.
The bacteria is always good. It's just, are you going to work with the bacteria, or are you going to work against it?
Okay, so
if you work with it, you eat properly to make sure your body cleanses and heals properly. It's simple as that. If you don't, if you want to continue French fries and potato chips and cereals and garbage food, then you're going to invite the non-healing and non-proper detoxification of your body, and you're going to have problems with those particular bacteria. But the bacteria is not the problem.
Could he have reversed that? If
Well,
he
that-
was on his regular diet and then all of a sudden he changed his diet?
It could have taken about a year.
And really acceptable evasive measures, because
That was
obviously in his
good diet.
his toxic level is so high that somebody felt like it was
Yeah.
threatening his life. Is there some other acceptable modality that can be a little more evasive in the beginning, sort of even the playing field, and then go back to the more natural?
Well, it's everybody's risk how they want to do it. You take antibiotics to do it, you destroy your digestibilities. What's the chance that you'll lose your taste buds? You'll lose your ability to digest anything. There you're taking your chances. So would you rather take a chance on the localized infection, or would you rather take a chance on polluting the entire system and breaking it down? It's up to you. It's an individual course. And I certainly, I encourage people to use the natural course rather than the other natural course, because the side effects will be a lot less, and they're a lot less complicated to get well if you're following the natural.
In his case, he was told his life was being threatened. That's kind of an honorable
I
statement.
hear that bullshit all the time. Doctors are loaded with that. That is their modus operandi. This is dangerous. You know how many times I was told I was in danger? I went through the chemotherapy and everything. They said, "You're absolutely going to die. You've got to take this chemo. You only have 1% chance of living, but you have to take it." Wait a minute, 1% chance of living? 1%? And you want me to poison myself and vomit every day more, lose my hair more, crawl around like a worm? And that's the way you want me to live? It's an absurdity.
But even in your book, you mentioned that those root canals must go. And the toxins are
I said
devastating.
if
I couldn't live without.
I said if the person is an elderly person and can't do it.
That applies to me, I guess.
Well, no, you're pretty healthy. I don't think you will. I think you would have made it
Really?
very easily, as
They
a matter
don't
of
know.
fact.
I don't know what.
I'm talking about these feeble old people that are going around like this. Those are the kind that won't make it because they just don't have enough strength and nutrients in their body, even if they go on a raw diet, to clean it out for maybe 5 years. They can't endure that.
So how would he have gotten a good second opinion to counteract the first diagnosis?
There's no way he would have gotten a good second opinion. They're all freaked out. They're all indoctrinated by it.
So you have a hard choice to make.
The problem is they get good results. See, after they pull that root canal out, the patients really get recovered, and especially when they go on a healthy diet, they really recover very quickly, and and everybody says, "Oh, it was those root canals."
Yeah,
They don't give the credit to the diet, more to the infection.
The extraction. But you also have to understand that once that tooth is gone, they use an implant, a non-human body and they screw it, and they drill out the bone, and then they put this mechanical device in there. I say, listen, I've got my own tooth. It's not live anymore. It's their root canal. I'd rather have a post in my own tooth connected to my bone rather than a foreign object.
Yes and no. You see, it's the bacteria. So the bacteria produces these toxins, and in my case, I just couldn't handle it anymore.
The bacteria.
I didn't, and I wouldn't. Yes, of course. No, of course. There are a lot of good. You see, the fact is there are a lot of good doctors now that they tell you this is not a good idea. Don't put metal. They will put something removable, but they won't put metal. And maybe science will come up with something that can, compatible with the body, not metal. Metal produces electrical currents, and that's why it causes the thinking and all that kind of stuff. But There are a lot of good doctors in San Diego that will tell you, no, the metal is not a good idea. So that we are fortunate actually, because they are trained. But they are still, there's a lot of controversy about should we leave that dead to this is dead. It's not only the toxins.
Do you know how many people die from infections, root infections, root canal infections a year?
A lot. According to Dr. Hal Higgins, a lot of people die from that. Yeah. He's got the statistics.
Well, his statistics aren't true.
He's seen it over 35 years. You cannot ignore that. This guy is, I've read a lot of his books, and he has 35 years of following this, and he knows that this is stuff.
How many patients does he see?
Especially mercury and all that.
How many patients has he seen in his lifetime?
Maybe 100,000.
He's seen 100,000 people. How many of them?
There are a lot of them are dying.
I know who he is. I read his book.
Some people were on the operational table, and they pulled that teeth out, and they recovered. They were dying. A lot of people died from heart attack, from all kind of stuff.
He does say that it causes other problems in the heart and other essential organs.
That is a theory. It's not proved. If you go into the heart and you bisect the heart after the person dies, and you find that same infection in the heart, you can address it to that. That will be causative in the person's death. I looked at that research. It wasn't there. He makes assumptions without scientific proof, and you can't do that. A lot of people drop dead of heart attacks from all different kinds of things.
Yeah, but also the toxins themselves will affect the meridian, and it can slow the heart meridian.
Any kind of illness will do that.
Yes, but there isn't enough information to put one's fingers on it. But the proof is there. You pull that root canal out, the patient immediately, in 5 minutes, he recovers.
That's in so few people.
He got thousands.
I've seen thousands of people who've had root canals taken and didn't take care of the problem.
No, because the problem is not just the toxins, okay? The problem is not the toxins. You have to get rid of all the accumulation of toxins. You see, people who have root canals, usually they also
You're playing both sides of the fence. You can't do that.
I'm completely neutral on this, believe me, Aajonus.
I have to be,
because I don't have...
At all.
Pardon me?
I had all my root canals out and I didn't get better at all.
I know.
No, you didn't know.
But I did. I recovered from, I had all these kind of flu symptoms. But I don't, I have to be in the middle actually, because, I'm following your program, and I'm also seeing what the teeth problem is. You see, in my case, I was eating your program for 2 months, and I didn't really got over what I was feeling. I was feeling always these flu symptoms. The minute these guys went out, I recovered. At least those flu symptoms went away. But no, there are a lot of other things. I think the toxins are still in my body.
Absolutely.
Of course. And I will need probably, who knows, 1 year, 6 months. I don't know, depending what I'm going to do. And, but they are not, you see, thank you.
40 years. 40 years.
Maybe, yeah. Who knows? Okay.
Let me give you an example. Okay, when I had radiation, it rotted all the bone around my teeth. So all my teeth dangled. So if I bit down on my own teeth, I bled. I bled up to half a cup a day sometimes. I had to have a transfusion twice because of the amount of blood that I lost. So I had to suck everything to a straw. And that's the way I had to eat for 2.5 years. They told me that those infections were going to kill me because I already had a heart condition. They said it was going to go to my brain because they had the cancer and the lymphoma. They told me all these kind of horror stories, and they're full of it. And they're saying, well, this person happened here, it happened over there. They are so full of shit. They do not have the true science. If you're going to say it killed somebody in the heart, I better find that infection in the heart that was here in the heart. If it doesn't exist,
but
it's an assumption.
Price and who was the other guy? They did the
Price is not a scientist. Price was a researcher. He came to really broad conclusions. Pottinger was the scientist.
Yes,
Pottinger was a scientist.
but they found the toxins in those organs. Once they implanted the teeth, they actually found the same, whatever was happening to that guy when his teeth was there, they implanted that rabbits, and then this is thousands of rabbits, not just one rabbit or two rabbits.
If you take a chip of that tooth and you plant it in somebody's organ, the infection's going to be there.
Of course.
But that doesn't mean it traveled from here in the human body while it was alive to the heart. That's what I'm saying. The only way you can prove it, I can take a piece of mustard and implant it in your heart and cause you a heart attack.
But there is enough evidence now from their research that this toxins travels from, they even travel on the axons of the nervous system.
There is no scientific evidence. There is no autopsies to prove that. There is no laboratory tests from those autopsies to prove that.
Well, I think
it's a huge assumption.
I don't have those references, okay? I think Dr. Hal Higgins will have them. He will not put them in his books. This guy is a very, very prestigious guy, okay? And I've read his books. Which one? Have you heard have you read his book, MS? MS. Well, I just finished reading it. And he says all these toxins travel over over many channels in the body, not just the nervous system.
But he's making that assumption. There's no proof. He has no evidence of that. That's the problem.
He says he's...
I talked to him 12 years ago, and he didn't have the evidence. Open up your mind. He doesn't have the evidence. He's making an assumption.
I will ask him next time.
That it crosses barriers and paths. There's no evidence that it does.
But the results are there. The toxins are traveling to the brain, and they are giving...
I didn't say it doesn't travel to the brain.
And in a toxic body,
not to the heart.
Happen, Aajonus, but in a healthy body, they are eating well. Of course, there is the material that will wash these toxins, will help the kidneys, will help the liver. This is, of course. I mean, they are not, these two ideas are not, against each other. If you are on a good diet, definitely. Yeah, even himself, he says that. That's why he has a book on good diet, but it's not 100%. He says...
His diet sucks, that's right.
That doesn't suck. He says also that you should eat it as raw as possible. His ideas are solid. He's very close to what you are thinking about raw diet and everything, and he promotes raw diet. Okay, maybe not 100%, all right, but pardon me? No, he's not promoting it 100%, of course, but he's saying raw diet is good for you. The more raw it is, the better for you, because the enzymes are there.
But see, he doesn't even know that.
He does.
He's coming to conclusions based on not experience. See, I don't accept anything unless I got the experience in it. And I waited 28 years of experience with a raw diet before I ever came out with a book.
What do you mean by experience?
You've got to see people change on a raw diet. You've got to document it. He hasn't done that.
He's a dentist.
How many people, I'm sorry, what's your name?
Isa.
Ask Aajonus how many people he has seen that he's gotten well, that he's followed. You're focused in on one person and reading
I'm not.
I'm just saying, it's you need, like you said, broaden your horizon here. After your iridology, then talk to Aajonus.
I have.
Your focus, I just asked that we move on.
Yeah, we're going to have to, definitely.
Yeah.
Because we won't get up with other people's questions. Okay. Do you have a question?
I guess with viruses, the only question I have, I watch a virus move through an office with tremendous predictability. It sure appears contagious to me. And I watch the people who I know their diets aren't that great seem to get sicker. I get it, I'm somewhere in the middle. How can it be this isn't contagious? What was it, like 100th monkey syndrome?
How many millions of roosters crow at sunrise? Does it bring up does the crowing of the roosters bring sunrise?
No.
Okay. Just like I said in my books, all viruses are environmentally appropriate for a specific time, for a specific tissue. So a lot of people are going to get it because it's a climatic event. It's like bears come out of hibernation. And they come out of hibernation here in the States first. As we get up into Canada, a month later, well, those bears must be contagious because they're coming out of hibernation as they come in contact all the way up to Alaska. People have to detoxify because everybody's eating toxicity and everybody's in a toxic environment, absorbing poisons in pollution, environmental pollution, and in their food every day. People have to have those viruses to clean because they're too toxic to utilize bacteria and parasites. And even those are infections that normally occur cyclically. And if they're not specific to a certain tissue, then the body's going to detoxify everything all at one time.
Well, if everyone in the office is getting ill, is that some kind of biological mass hysteria? Everybody triggers the same problems all at once because they're close to each other?
No. It's just natural process. If you go into a school, half the kids won't get it, or even more than half don't get it. It's usually 2/3 of the kids will not get the flu, but 1/3 does. That's the average.
There's also an energetic factor there. I like what you said in your book.
Wait a minute. I can't have you answering questions here because then we won't have time. Okay? There are a lot of other reasons, but we're just talking about my particular perspective. Okay? There's a lot of other things about it. People can have psychological problems, burn up their nutrients and anxiety. They can do drugs. There are all kinds of other problems. But it all comes down to toxicity. When they've got the toxicity in the system, they need to clean. If they can't use bacteria and parasites, they have to use virus. And there are a lot more symptoms with virus because it's not reducing the contamination by consuming it and reducing it. It is just breaking it apart and dispersing it. It's like you using soap and a solvent with water. You clean it up and you still got the same amount of contaminated water because you've dissolved the toxicity. It isn't like you consumed it and here you've got an excrement that is minute amount of what it was you consumed. So viruses are very toxic. They've got a lot of waste products that have to be neutralized by the lymphatic system and the rest of the system. But again, it is all cyclical. People are getting the same virus because that is the appropriate time. And if they have enough toxicity and maybe they're well enough, they can go through it. Those who don't get to go through it maintain that waste in that particular tissue of the body, and then they just get more toward a more advanced disease.
So also if someone has a particular, isn't it also specific to different areas in the body that needs to be detoxed in that particular person? For instance, if a lot of people en masse need to have their liver detoxed, and because of whatever environmental effect, that a particular virus may be just the appropriate virus to detox that, and so all those people happen to get it.
Okay, take a look at the Black Plague. You know, the notable Black Plague that everybody refers to. It didn't happen in the farmland. It happened in London and the big cities all over. Every block you had at least, you had either one blacksmith or a silver maker or a jeweler, silversmith they call them then, and what else were they burning in those days? A waste burning incinerator. So one of these occurred on every block. All this smog and fog laid heavy in the cities, everybody was getting polluted heavily, especially with all these metal poisonings. That Black Plague was a reaction of all the heavy metals in the lungs. It didn't happen to the farmers because they had plenty of fresh air around. It was only those people who left the cities and went out to the farmland and those people who lived in the cosmopolitan societies that had it.
So is that answered my question?
Yes. Do you have a question, Beth?
I have a little dog. It just got, it's a year and a half old, and it's had its flus, and it's had its shots and all that stuff before it ate processed foods. It got lost from its owner about 2 months ago, came back with little kind of bald spots, and now they're kind of growing. They're kind of polka dotted all over, little bald spots, a little bit dry. He's on the raw diet now. Do you know what it could be and how, how I might best treat it? Give me a little lube formula now.
Well, it's difficult because when they give dogs vaccines, for a little animal, they're giving 100 times what should even be conceptually given to them. So the amount of thimerosal, the amount of aluminum, the amount of formaldehyde that's getting into the nervous systems is pretty extravagant. I am noting on, when I was 10 years old and very fond of, animals, and none of them went into rear end paralysis, didn't go into tremblings, When they died, you just died naturally, pretty easily. Some of them died of, heart disease or, a seizure or something like that. But I see animals now where they're only 6 and 7 years old and they'll become completely crippled, all in the back end. And it's phenomenal the amount that are doing it, and it's from the vaccines that get into their nervous system, and it's difficult to get it out because 1 or 2 molecules of mercury the body can take out at a time, and it can take up to 20,000 fat cells or 10,000 white blood cells. Carry out 1 to 2 molecules of mercury at a time. In a pinhead, you can have 2 million molecules of mercury. So getting an animal well from vaccines is not going to be a likely thing because they're not going to eat the coconut cream to do it. Dogs and cats are very strict on their diet. So they're not going to eat what it takes. Dogs a little bit easier because they're a scavenger. But the best thing you can do to help the nervous system is, to give them fish, and we'll eat. Dogs won't eat a lot of fish. So to detoxify, and, coconut cream you can probably get them to eat more of to help detoxify it.
So you think that came from vaccines, even though he came back from being lost for a week with spots? They suddenly came up, we thought maybe it was stress.
Well, everybody talks about stress in our society. Dogs live out in the wild naturally. Everything that's wild lives out in a very stressful environment. When I lived outdoors for 3 years, it was the most stressful thing I'd ever gone through. And I thought that living with my brother and father would be the most stressful thing I ever went through. And it wasn't, because I had the sun to deal with every day. I had the cold of the night to deal with every day. And I had cancers of the blood and bone and lymph. So cold just crippled me. And it was very agonizing. So just living out in the elements every day was quite a feat. And to find food, that's stressful, So he can get into garbage cans and get all kinds of, food. There's not much stress. Dogs who live in our environment are pretty good scavengers. Not bad. But if you had to go out into the desert and hunt a rabbit or something, that would be a lot of stress on it. And when you have patches of toxicity like that, If you take those scrapings like I've done over the years and you analyze them, I've always found concentrations of mercury and formaldehyde if it's recent. I've never found formaldehyde as a residue that stays in the body for a very long period of time. And I've never found a scaly area from a dog or a cat that had formaldehyde residues over a year after a vaccine. But up to a year I have. After that, it's always been, mercury or the aluminum coming out through the skin. And most often the concentrations are highest in mercury. If you see gray hairs come out at the same time, there's usually more concentration of aluminum from the vaccine.
I was feeding him a little raw food. It was my neighbor's dog at that time before I adopted him. I was feeding him a little raw food around that time, so I wonder if it was detoxing him.
Probably was.
The time that he started losing his hair. So just the diet that you already recommended.
Or he was, intuitively he was starting to detox and you caught on to it and started helping him. Because he may not have made it through such a detox without certain foods.
So fish and cocoa cream.
Will help get rid of those kind of toxins. But if you want to help the skin heal, he needs honey and butter.
Not the lube formula?
Well, the lemon juices doesn't really advance the dog's, ability to digest the butter.
He doesn't
love
love
it.
it.
May complicate it. So better just
butter.
have butter and honey.
Okay.
Do you have a question?
Thank you.
Yes. Previous to, I just recently started trying to do the primitive diet and read your books. And previous to reading them, I had experienced, after living in Japan for 6 years, odd periods of flu-like symptoms that would last for 4 or 5 weeks with fevers that wouldn't go away, and some other odd symptoms, swelling, and some odd things that at that time I took antibiotics, and I don't know, I think I went to a clinic and they gave me some medication for it. But since being on the primitive...
Now think about this.
Yes.
Viruses are not alive.
Yeah.
At least 2/3 of the doctors out there know that antibiotics are useless for virus. Yet they still give them, even though they know they're not appropriate. Idiotic. Go ahead.
And had cured the fever, or the fever left, but just a lot of bad side effects from whatever the medications were they gave you and stuff like that. Since being on the primitive diet, I haven't been perfect. I usually, once or twice a week I've gone off, but it seems like my body's, instead of going a couple weeks and kind of then slowly detoxing, it seems like after even 2 to 4 days, I start lurching into like these flu-like, really heavy flu-like symptoms with a lot of pain and very, very quickly, and then it'll last for a while, and then seem to subside for a week or two and then come back again. So obviously I'm detoxifying, but I guess my question is that normal, or is that...
It's normal for people who are as thin as you are.
For me, because of being thin?
Because you have no fats to absorb those poisons. So the body goes into live cells to rip fat from them.
Is that where the pain's coming from?
Yes, because it goes in and damages the nerves.
Because I feel like something's eating me alive sometimes, like...
Well, it's taking you apart. It keeps pulling the fats out. That's why I say in my books, get fat, get overweight.
Okay, so I just keep consuming whatever. It's such a new concept for me. I'm really just learning about it, and I'm trying. I feel like I am doing it, but evidently I don't seem to be gaining any weight. So I don't know. But
I
maybe
would
I'm
say
not,
do schedule eating plan 2 in the recipe book, and do it diligently. You'll gain weight.
but other than that, so the body will detoxify slower that way. You're saying, or
The body's not going to detoxify properly if you don't have enough fats.
so it's
going to recirculate a lot of the poisons.
okay.
And they're not going to leave the system.
Oh, okay.
A lot of them won't.
All right. So I need to just get on the fat thing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Increase your fats. Gain weight.
It's hard.
The first, year, 1976, when I discovered raw meat, I mean,